'cause we want more of you, Jesus, Jesus. We want more of you, Jesus.
It is a dangerous thing if a woman does not know the Lord. So God can only be known by encounters. Encounters are actually the place and the process and the time when divinity unveils himself so that mortals can see him and apprehend him. They are realities that encompasses the place, the time, the moment, and the process by which divinity unveils himself so that mortals can behold him and apprehend him. That's what an encounter is. And until a man encounters the Lord, he can never know him. This is why this is always the first every time we speak on the knowledge of God. If you have not had an encounter with the Father, with the Son, with the Word, with the Spirit, you can never know God. So the most important aspect of an encounter is not necessarily the encounter itself. It's first the purpose of the encounter, and secondly how to provoke encounters. Because there are things you do that makes God want to reveal himself to you. There are things that makes God want to reveal himself to you. Not everybody knows the Lord. You can brag, you can boast. I know people who comes to tell you things like, my sheep knoweth my voice and they follow me. Sir, when you come to the junction of life, you will know whether you know him. This is not, spiritual things are not matters to brag about. In fact, they humble us. Because the same thing you thought you knew, you try it the next day, and then you are completely oblivion to it. The same thing you did yesterday and got a result, because the Spirit of God did not alight upon it, you do it today and you will marvel. Did you not read about the disciples? God gave them power, they went, cast out devils, they returned. In Matthew chapter 10. And then in Matthew 17, the same people began to struggle with the guy that was dumb and deaf and dumb and could not cast out the devil. So we don't master God. We yield continuously for him to keep revealing himself. It's an everyday dependence on divinity. So you don't brag that you know the Lord. The moment you see a man bragging, it's a sign that he doesn't even know God. Because he can only be revealed, and it's a product of encounter. And when an encounter comes, it is real. You can't deny it. Most of the men you see who cannot deny the Lord is because they encountered God. They were not taught God. They encountered him. So they can't. Denying God will be like denying themselves. The first time I encountered the Lord, I was about 7 years old. I was sitting outside. Usually my mother every night would drag me out. I didn't like it. And she would get me singing these worship songs with her in our native dialect. And every lady must be spiritual. The destiny of children depends on the intimacy of the mother with God. A child may never know God unless the mother is spiritual. I know there are cases where God, by reason of mercy, encounter people. But many people who are great today, their success in the kingdom, I can name them. Their success in the kingdom is dependent on the faith of their mothers. That's why Paul said concerning Timothy about the faith that was in the mother Eunice and in the grandmother Lois. It is the work of the mother with God that oftentimes determines the spirituality and the destiny of the child in God. This is why women must be so spiritual. It is a dangerous thing if a woman does not know the Lord. The destiny of the children can be wasted. Men don't have time to really interact. Intimate relationship in the family context is usually between the child and the mother. The relationship between the child and the father is more of responsibility and also to channel and to administer leadership so that the child finds destiny. Who the child becomes, the substance of his personality, is actually a function of the maturity of the mother in divine things or spiritual things. So my mom dragged me all the time. There are times she carries me to Bible studies. I will groan, I will quarrel, I will scream, I will be angry, and sometimes she will scold me, sometimes she will force me, sometimes she will beat me, sometimes she will persuade me. Eventually I will follow her. And that was what she did with me every evening, singing with her at night. And it was one of those nights while we were yet singing, lying on benches outside. And I turned, and suddenly I saw the heavens open as though a curtain was pulled out. And I saw the Lord Jesus sitting on a throne. And I saw a woman presenting a child. And I tapped my mom, look, look, look. And before she turned, it covered up. That was the beginning of my journey in the supernatural. Thank God for my blessed mother. Thank God she didn't give in to my foolishness, my distraction. She compelled me until I found God. So encounters are the ground where the experiential knowledge of God is activated. So the greatest significance now is not just about the encounters or the stories of the encounters. Is to understand the purpose of encounters and to also understand how to provoke encounters. There are many purposes for encounters, but three major purposes for encounters are: one, to gain experiential knowledge of God. It is only by encounters that men know the Lord. The Bible speaking concerning Abraham, that God had appeared to him and told him, get thee out of thy country. Genesis chapter 12 from verse 1 to 3. Out of thy kindred, out of thy father's house, and come to the land I will show you. And then blessings followed. So Abraham knew God by encounters. The same happened to Isaac. It happened to Jacob. It was Jacob that was on his way from Laban's house, and the Lord interfaced him in Genesis 28, and all of the wrestling and everything, and God broke his thigh bone and said, you shall no longer be called Jacob but Israel. And all of that. For as a prince, thou hast power with God and have prevailed. So they knew God by encounters. Moses knew God by encounters. In Exodus chapter 3 from verse 1, he said Moses came to Horeb, the mountain of God, and he saw a bush burning that was not consumed. And God himself will tell Moses that I revealed myself to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as El Shaddai. So they didn't read God. They were not taught God. They encountered God. So every believer who wants to have a genuine walk and a lasting walk must engage the protocols of encounter so that he knows God for himself. That's why I said, they that do know their God. You may be taught God and you accept him as God. You may read God and accept him as God. But to know God, you must encounter him. Everybody that did exploit in the kingdom encountered the Lord. I was among the captives by the river Kabar. Ezekiel chapter 1 from verse 1. In the 30th month. In the 30th year, in the 5th month, on the 4th day, I was among the captives by the river Kabar, and I saw visions of God. I was in the isle called Mount Patmos for the testimony of the Lord, and I heard a voice as of a trumpet, and as I turned, every one of them, they knew God by experience because they encountered God. If you have not encountered God, you can never have the experiential knowledge of God.